before this segment, you kind of talked about the chip makers and, beginning to produce more in the U.S. I think that's a lot of narrative-based changes, but when you look at long-term, it's just going to be difficult for the U.S. to really be a leader in producing chips. Sure, they can try and they can produce some, but to say that they're going to produce all their chips in the U.S. is just frankly nonsense.
Yeah, I want to pick up on that, Adam, because with all this talk of TSMC, we've seen this before. We've seen some of the culture clashes. We've seen some of the difficulties in being able to do this. I mean, so how much credence should we be giving to this sort of new theme that's playing out of manufacturing over in the US, given some of the speed bumps that this is hitting, as far as this trend is concerned? Because, if it does work, then no doubt it's a good thing, because you had a company like Contemporary Amperex, for instance, over in China saying, look, if Trump lets us set up a factory over there, a battery plant, we'll do it, because if he wants to support US workers. But there's no clear signs as to whether that's actually going to be the case yet.
Right. Yeah, I think that is a difficult one. I think the reality is the real narrative is around U.S.-based companies and getting them back to producing in the U.S. I think the case for having Chinese companies produce in the U.S., that's really going to be difficult, and it's going to be difficult for Trump to use that rhetoric to motivate his base, because the whole point is that it's U.S. companies and he's really behind them. So I think in the short term, it's going to be completely narrative based, and you're going to see a lot of rhetoric around what's going to happen. But as you just said, the reality is this is a huge market that needs globalization. And so I think the reality will set in eventually. It may take some time. The sad part is markets will move on the narrative right now. So you do need to invest according to that. But long term, the reality is, like I keep saying, is it needs globalization. There's going to be too much demand.
Sure.
Depending on how you believe this AI story is going to play out, it is a real story. There is going to be real growth and a huge demand on semiconductors. So if you have that, it's going to be really difficult to do that just in the U.S. It's actually impossible to just do it in the U.S. So I think you need globalization, and so I don't think anything's going to change there. It's just going to take time for all this stuff to play out and all the kind of like you said, rhetoric to work its way through the markets.
Okay, I have less than 40 seconds for this answer, Adam Coons. Are you going to be scaling back on Nvidia, because you're saying that you're done with the AI-based trade, that you're reducing exposure there?
I am in the short term, because I think it's going to be difficult for these U.S. companies with all of the changes that are going to be happening to really manage their story in the short term. So because of that, and because it's so cyclical, I think we're at the kind of the peak of the semiconductor cycle. I'm fading that. I'm going to back away, and then as I see that kind of roll over, then I'll jump back in. Long term, I think it's a great story. Short term, I think it's difficult.